You are now listening to Couch Coach Live.
During the production of Couch Coach Live, we had some breaking news to happen while we were in mid-recording. So the big major breaking news story was Luke Kuechly announcing his retirement at the age of 28. Luke Kuechly was basically the heart and soul of the Carolina Panthers, was there for 8 years. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler and also a 5-time All-Pro selection. Was it a surprise to me? Yeah, but then when you look at from the grand scheme of things of just what has happened as far as the multitude of concussions and what have you, I'm really not 100% shocked. If it was a shock scale, I'd probably maybe about 60 to 70% surprised that he actually retired, and just to retire at the age of 28, which I think is really amazing, considering the fact it's almost aligned with like Patrick Willis. Patrick Willis retired at the age of 29, and also he was a 7-time Pro Bowl selection as well. Going forward with Luke Kuechly, as far as Hall of Fame, I'm not sure. I mean, it could be a distinct possibility. It's one of the things I think you really got to see what they're gonna do as far as Patrick Willis is concerned. But that's here nor there. I think it's going to start becoming a growing trend in this league where guys are just gonna, you're not gonna really see guys playing past a certain level in their life. I can see guys now possibly retiring before the age of 30. Basically, and I think it's just realizing that the long-term ramifications of playing this game for such a long period of time can do, do bad things to your health. So I think a lot of guys starting to wise up and starting to realize, hey, well, yeah, let me, just be here for a few years, make my money, and and can retire, in a decent time, in a decent part of my life where I'm still able to have a long lasting and a healthy life after football. And I think, definitely huge kudos to Luke Kuechly, what he's done. He was the heart and soul of the Carolina Panthers. And, and I guarantee you there's probably going to be some room for him, in somebody's coaching staff somewhere, that if he chooses to take that route, he'll definitely have a spot. But Luke Kuechly retiring at the age of 28, that's has been the breaking news story. And without much further ado, give you guys this week's Couch Coach Live podcast. We just want to jump in and let you know the breaking news story. And let's go on with the show. It's the Couch Coach Live. This week on the Couch Coach Live podcast, we discuss our thoughts on LSU defeating Clemson in the national championship game, our thoughts on Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow going forward, and Clemson, what are they going to do going forward? Also, we talked about the Baltimore Ravens taking a huge L to the Tennessee Titans, bandwagon fans, the Chiefs, the 49ers, and much more. And did Cleveland get the right hire when they hired Kevin Stefanski? It's right here on a brand new Couch Coach Live. Check it out right now. This is the Couch Coach Live podcast. So we are back here on another Couch Coach Live. We are back for another weekly installment of the Couch Coach Live podcast. I am back, guys. Last week, I was a little under the weather. I had to kind of take a little break, it's one of those things where it hasn't happened, Sometimes you get sat down for a reason. Voice was shot. We just feeling like crap all week. But we back here. Got the vitamin C. Got the diet back right, going back right. So we back here on another Couch Coach Live. So let's get it started. So I definitely got to give a huge shout out to LSU, who took care of business last night in the national championship game, defeating Clemson by the final score of 42-25. Joe, what can I say about Joe Burrow? What I can, Joe Burrow was amazing last night. Threw for 6 touchdowns. He breaks the single season record for most touchdowns in a season for 60 touchdowns. Beating my boy, former Redskins backup quarterback, probably one of my favorite players of all time, and Colt Brennan. And this is, I think, with him having 60 touchdowns, especially playing in an SEC where there's NFL competition every week that he's faced, and him to have it in a major conference like that is just so amazing. And my actual personal opinion of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, if I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, I am just truly ecstatic. I cannot wait for this National Football League draft to transpire in April. If I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, this guy, I think he's just going to be so successful. I think with a guy like him, even though he had a great season, this isn't something that kind of, in a sense, happened overnight. You look at the stats, okay, he had a pretty much mediocre last year, and it translates now to having one of the most successful seasons as a quarterback can have in college football. But this is long overdue. I mean, you look at a guy who essentially went to Ohio State and was in probably one of the most crowded quarterback rooms. You look at, he was in the quarterback room with J.T. Barrett. He was in there with Cardale Jones. Those guys. Then he hits a rough patch. He doesn't get there. Joe Burrow definitely wanted to go to Nebraska. Even Nebraska didn't want him. And then finally, Coach O gave him a shot down at LSU, and the rest is history. And I think one of those things where I think people have to really realize that, and I think this is going to help translate him as far as going forward in the National Football League. This guy has been through adversity. The road has not been easy for him. And I think there's going to be a situation in Cincinnati where he's going to hit rough patches, and I think he can fall back on his experience going forward and realize, hey, this is just a bump in the road. I can always overcome it. And plus, it really helps, in my personal opinion, having a guy like a Joe Burrow who helped, LSU's passing game and pretty much bringing in a pro-style offense, with Joe Brady being under the tutelage of Sean Payton with the New Orleans Saints. So that really definitely helps him going forward. He's excelled in a pro-style offense. It's just going to be just extremely exciting if I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, just to see a Ohio kid kind of come back and make do of it. If I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, this is probably the best thing since not acquiring, but more so drafting Carson Palmer back in 2003. I think he's the next big franchise quarterback for this team going forward. I'm extremely excited for them. And just going back to the LSU, it's funny. LSU, this is this is what I liked about this team. And it was funny because most teams, LSU teams, historically have been these defensive juggernauts. They're DBU. You look at the Honey Badger, Mo Claiborne. You look at just all these polished cornerbacks going to LSU and becoming, pretty much productive players in the National Football League. And now you look at them as being one of the most prolific offenses probably in college football history. And it was one of the things where it's surprising that everything kind of came into fruition during the regular season, because going in, everybody had these high hopes on their offense, and then part of you think to yourself, is LSU offense really that good? Is it just something that we're just saying in the preseason? But lo and behold, every week they came out and they dominated offensively, and even to their credit, they did a tremendous job in the national championship game, especially on one of a top defensive team like a Clemson, who, even though we looked at Clemson where they were going to take a step back because, of course, they lost a lot of their defensive ends. You're looking at no Cleveland Farrell, no Christian Wilkins. Those guys are gone. But you look at a guy that they had in Isaiah Simmons, who I think was pretty much their quote unquote their Swiss Army knife. He was a straw that stirred the drink for the Clemson's defense. And what was impressive about the game last night was LSU's adjustments. Clemson was throwing the kitchen sink at them at one point. a lot of times, and they adjusted. And that was one of those things where you look at from the, if you look at the score of the game, even though you're looking at it from the totality of, that's a 17-point win, but I think it was a lot closer than you would look at the score itself, especially with Clemson in a sense controlling the tempo for the majority of the game, and then LSU pretty much imposing their will offensively on this Clemson team. But it was just very amazing, and it's funny how we look at this LSU team, and it's funny, a lot of people are, when we look at this LSU team from the standpoint of, all-time great, or even in the conversation, I've heard a lot of chatter today, and even in the past couple of weeks prior to this game, where a lot of people looked at this, well, they could possibly have a seat at the table as one of the best teams in college football history. But to me, it's like, you without thinking, going into great depth of it, but I do see this team as a top 10 of all-time great. I think when you look at the whole totality of it, them having 7 top 10 wins, and pretty much in convincing fashion. Most of these games weren't close in the sense. They were close games, but they weren't like the, most. Now when we look at other teams where we looked at where they just over top domination, but they had great solid wins over top 10 talent. You got to think about it. They were 15-0. 7 of their 15 wins came off a top 10 competition. And then just the simple fact of them playing in the SEC, coupled with that, where, you got to think about it. This team beat in Alabama. Even though Tua wasn't 100%, but they still got the victory. You just look at, they beat a Florida team who I think, if we look at it from a grand scheme of things, Florida by far is probably one of the second or third best team in the SEC. Then you go to Georgia. Essentially, you go in the SEC championship and you beat Georgia, which even though we say that it's a, the SEC championship game was in Atlanta, that's a neutral site, but we know that if you're a geographic buff, that Athens, Georgia, and Atlanta is like an hour away. And that's, to me, that's not a neutral site when you're playing a team that they're an hour away from campus. They're a drive away from the campus. So, just in that simple fact, and then now beating the Clemson. So, to me, this is going to be one of those teams, I think, when we look going forward down the annals of history, where I think they will be considered one of the top teams. And it's got to be, and it's been by a landslide. For them to have this type of season is just something that even I couldn't even really imagine. I figured they were going to have a bump in the road, because I think even when I did my predictions in August, I really thought this team was going to be dominant. I knew they were going to beat Alabama. I knew they had they had the offense, they had the personnel to beat Alabama. But it was some odd reason I predicted them. I think they were going to lose it. My biggest thing was they were going to lose to Georgia. And that was going to be one of the reasons why they weren't going to make the college football playoff. But, of course, I was dead wrong. And, I can admit that. But with that said, I really think this is going to be a team that we're going to look at as one of the top teams of all time in college football. Now, on the Clemson end, this might have been the best thing to happen to Clemson. And I know it's funny to say that, them losing like this and Trevor Lawrence losing his first game ever as a collegiate is, why would that be the best thing? And I think this is the best thing for them going forward, because now they have a chip on their shoulder going into the 2020 season. And you look at Trevor Lawrence, he's coming off of a loss in a national championship, and this, going into his final season at Clemson. And you got to think to yourself, he's got something to prove, because now, it was starting to get to a point where a lot of guys were thinking, well, if he would have won this national championship, still was undefeated, what else can he do? Will he skip his junior year? And you got to think to yourself, he's not going to skip his junior year, not at all. He has something to prove. He's got to go out there. He's going to ball. I know he wants to, go out there and win another national championship. He wants to probably have another undefeated season. And hell, he might want to try to get to Joe Burrow's record next year? Where could Trevor Lawrence get to the point where he's so hell bent to a point where he wants to go out and have 61 touchdowns during the season and become the all-time, become one of the most prolific, have one of the most prolific offensive seasons for a quarterback in college football history? Now he's chasing that, where now, and it's funny because I think Clemson, and it's something that we've grown accustomed with Clemson. Clemson is better when they're the underdog. Clemson is better when they're, in a sense, is not not counted on, where they're coming in. They're going to come in as a favorite, but they're coming off a loss in this type of fashion to a LSU. So that's why I look at where they're going to come out, and they're going to be coming out, and they're going to be pissed off. I don't think Dabo has to create a quote unquote bulletin board material. Just seeing that loss last night is going to propel them going forward. He doesn't have to make if we lose by this team, we shouldn't deserve to be in the playoff. Dabo doesn't even have to create any fake narrative to motivate this team. What happened last night was motivation in itself. And they're going to have something to play for, and they're going to play pissed off. You're going to have Clemson. They're going to be ball to the wall, and you're going to see a different Clemson team next year. Clemson's going to play with vigor, and they're going to play like a bat out of hell coming out the gates. This isn't going to be the, I wouldn't say conservative. This year I think they were just, in a sense, going through the motions. In a sense, they were bored because they were coming off a national championship after winning the national championship last year. And then you come into this season, you're undefeated. So, of course, every week, he's trying to create this narrative as if they're playing against weak competition, and they were just going through the motions. Now you're coming off a tough loss. Clemson's gonna come out firing. I just feel sorry for the ACC, and I just feel sorry for their opponents going forward. And Trevor Lawrence is going to come out like a bat out of hell. He's not going to sit and rest. He's not going to think about resting for an NFL franchise or whatever. He's gonna kind of come out and ball almost just like Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is gonna be Trevor Lawrence. Pardon me, but Trevor Lawrence is gonna try to come out like Joe Burrow out the gate. Joe Burrow is gonna be the number one pick in this year's draft. Guess what? Trevor Lawrence is gonna work his hardest to become the number one pick in the 2021 draft, which all signs point to it now, barring anything catastrophic. So I look at this Clemson team as a team that is going to be a team to reckon with next year, and they're going to play pissed off. And I think it's going to be fun seeing them bounce back, and just curious as how they're going to respond to this slice of adversity they have received. So now let's go to the National Football League, where the Ravens. Interesting that of course, everyone knows I'm a beloved Washington Redskins fan, and I call the Baltimore Ravens our little brothers because, of course, they are brothers of the Beltway. They're the little brothers. They've only won 2 Super Bowls. We've won 3. So I've always considered them as the little brother in this matchup. And plus, they've only been around for a mere 24 years. So... And they took an L on Saturday night against the Tennessee Titans, and they lost 28-12. This was a very interesting game where Lamar Jackson, kind of in the sense, I wouldn't say he came back to life, but he just had a bad game. Even though you look at the stat line, he did have almost 500 yards 500 yards of total offense, which is good, but you think about it, it's an empty stat line when you, especially considering the fact them having to play from behind, and then just the simple fact that he committed 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and 1 fumble recovery, and then not being able to get it done on 4th and 1 on 2 4th and 1s, which really hurt them. But I think the biggest thing, and of course he had an inflated stat line because they were down. They were down early. So of course they kind of abandoned what they were kind of known for, where they kind of had a balanced offensive attack, but they abandoned the major part of their game, which is in a sense the combination of passing and the run, which they became pretty much a one-dimensional team, and that's why you look at how they struggled after being down 14-0. And it's funny because I looked at this was the game that was interesting because to me I looked at whoever gained at least a 14-point lead is going to be in the driver's seat for this victory. And I thought it was more important for a Baltimore team to be up 14-0 compared to a Tennessee. So to me, them being down by 14 was almost like pending doom. And I think a lot of people could look at, especially how the game played out, even during times of when the Ravens were kind of making their run. It was almost like I don't see it in them. I don't see them actually overcoming their huge lead. So it was one of those situations where when you really think about it, that the Ravens, I wouldn't say they got exposed, but it was a situation where you knew this was over. This team just couldn't play from behind. This team, they always, even during the season, they pretty much established that tempo from the jump, and that's why you've seen the success with this team with them being 14-2, then losing to Tennessee, and then just credit to the Titans. And the Titans they're just imposing their will. Derrick Henry once again another solid performance, 195 yards last week. And then you're looking at a guy like a Ryan Tannehill, who basically had made the important throws, the ultimate game manager in the situation. He was just able to make critical throws, and perfect positions. And even though he's offensively, he ain't putting up the numbers like he needs to, but he's getting the job done. He's getting it done efficiently. He may not have the sexiest stat line, but hey, he's getting the job done. And just kudos to Mike Vrabel, what they're doing. They're just a mentally tough team, and you got to give him credit where credit's due. I mean, the fact that he took a limb, he basically benched Marcus Mariota in favor of Ryan Tannehill, which essentially saved the season. And it takes those type of moves, and it has to take that type of that type of kind of stones to actually do that, especially for a guy that's beloved like a Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota is loved in that locker room, and then for him to get benched subsequently during that time where essentially the season was on the brink. And you bring in, and then Ryan Tannehill comes in and kind of, I wouldn't say rescues it, but he gets to a point where they get to a level where they're where they're at now. I mean, especially when you look at the standpoint of this team was barely got in its own way, but if they would have kept Marcus Mariota, we wouldn't even be talking about the Tennessee Titans actually even heading to the AFC Championship game, I think, in my personal opinion. So it definitely took a lot of stones, a lot of balls to actually do that. So, and this is funny. So about a few months ago, there was a Washington Post article about a lot of Redskin fans essentially crossing over to the Beltway and becoming fans of the Baltimore Ravens. And, people ask me the question, would I ever, in a sense, cross over, in that sense? And I'm thinking to myself, no. I mean, to me, I thought that was one of the most asinine questions I heard that someone asked me in 2019. And I'm thinking to myself, and it's true. And that's what makes sports so interesting. Where you look at this, sports is unpredictable, and a lot of people said, well, would you change over to the Ravens because they having a successful season now compared to the Redskins, who had probably one of their worst seasons in their illustrious history. And you got to think to yourself, there was no guarantee that this Ravens team was going to win the Super Bowl, and they didn't, and they lost in the first round. And I look at it's almost the same. They pretty much the Redskins and the Ravens almost in a sense has the same result. Both of these two teams are feeling disappointed. The Redskins, of course, being 3-13, that's a different type of disappointment in itself. But then there's optimism going forward with, with all the new things that are going on in DC. And then you look at the Ravens. The Ravens they were 14-2. Best record. Everyone had this high expectation. The Ravens are going to go to the Super Bowl just on the strength of them having a great regular season. This, that, and the third. And then look what happened. They lose to the Tennessee Titans after essentially having 3 weeks off. Essentially. Of course, they rest the starters in week 17. Then they get the bye week. And, they get the wild card round, then the bye week. So basically, they haven't played meaningless football in 3 weeks. They get rusty and they lose. Both teams are disappointed. And to me, why in the hell would you want to trade one struggle for the next? That's why I thought that was the most dumbest thing someone asked me. Why, be a Ravens fan. Why wouldn't you be a Ravens fan? They're doing a whole lot better. Not really. Because what's more disappointing? To be honest with you, I'd rather be sitting where I'm at now at 13-3, a new coaching change. There's optimism. Who knows what's going to happen with Baltimore going forward next year? I mean, yeah, 14-2. That's great. That's a fantastic. That's just a beautiful regular season. But what did it translate to? Yeah, you got 2 weeks off, but guess what? You lost. So it's like one of those things where it's like, and we don't know if Baltimore is going to get back to that level. I know tons of NFL teams that have had a great regular season 1 year and then fall off the map the very next year. So that's why I just thought it was dumb. People was thinking, well, they just have everything better. No, it's sports. Sports is unpredictable. Yeah, one year one team may look good, then the next day might look horrible, and 1 year a team can go from last to first. That's what makes sports predictable. That's why I never understood the whole fact of, in a sense, being a bandwagon fan, because you can never predict if a team is going to be good or if a team is going to have success, because it's sports. Sports is unpredictable. That's one of the most things I think in life you can really hang your head and say, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. Like now, you look at what's going on in the conference championship games. Okay, yeah, you can project. Okay, yeah, it could be San Francisco and Kansas City. That's what it looked like it's going to be. But guess what? There's games to be played on Sunday that's going to determine that. That's why you play the games. You don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen. Just because you can think something can happen, it doesn't happen. So that's why I just thought that was really dumb how a lot of people were even asking me that, and then just not understanding that why would I change a football team as a grown ass man? Why would I want to change my football team? And people looked at me like I was crazy. And I thought, to me, that was like the dumbest question I ever heard in 2019. So staying in the NFL playoffs, let's talk about the Chiefs' epic comeback against the Houston Texans. Now, many of us, I know, like on Sunday, watching the game, you're thinking to yourself, oh man, the Texans are up 24-0. Maybe I should go and maybe run an errand, maybe go to the store, grab you something to eat or grab something, and come back and catch and see what's gonna happen. I guarantee you, if you were watching this game and you did this, what I just mentioned, go to the store, maybe run an errand, maybe go outside, do something. It was fairly warm. Take down your Christmas decorations or what have you. But if you came back within about 35, 45 minute window, what in the hell happened? And I think we all felt that way. What in the hell happened to the Houston Texans? And of course, the Houston Texans did end up losing that game 51-31. And you look at it from that standpoint, even being down by 24, even up by 24 points, they still lose by 20. So you look at it from the standpoint of them being down essentially by 44 points. To me, that was a 44-point loss. And in Houston, and it's funny. A lot of chatter has been going on as far as the people wanting to fire Bill O'Brien, and the Texans are in such a weird spot. And I look at just from the whole standpoint of that it's going to be just extremely interesting going forward. Like, what is Houston actually going? I mean, what is their? I mean, do they literally look at themselves in the mirror and think to themselves like, oh, we need to do better? I mean, you look at and I think I really go back to when the Houston Texans, and this is when I'm gonna maybe like it's right around like 2011, 2012. This was a good team. This was a really solid, good football team. They were kind of starting to come to their own, and I remember viewing them team as a very complete team without a franchise quarterback. So I looked at from that standpoint of those teams I thought were really good. And now you go and fast forward. Okay, well, they now finally got their, because I figure, okay, yeah, you got Matt Schaub. He's a good game manager. All guys, and even my guy. I mean, it's a lot. They've gone through a lot of quarterbacks where I thought they were going to be successful. And now they get a guy in a Deshaun Watson who is, I think, essentially is a franchise quarterback. And they're pretty much in the same predicament where they are, this team that wins 10 games every year, and they lose in the first round every year. They're the Saturday 4:35 wild card Saturday game that's every year, and we know they're going to lose, and that has transpired, and they were getting ready to lose again. And to be honest with you, if it wasn't for Deshaun Watson eluding those 2 tackles in the wild card game in that overtime period, we could be talking about the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. We could still be talking about the Buffalo Bills as being in the NFL playoffs off the strength of that. And it's just, to me, it trips me out, like how how this Houston Texas team, it's like they're going through an identity crisis. And then the simple fact, they don't have a general manager. I mean, a lot of stuff is just really weird going on with this Houston Texans team. This team doesn't have a general manager. They have a coach there that is underachieving. To me, it's like they had to look at themselves and be like, we need more. We got the pieces in place. We should be in that same conversation when we're looking at going forward. We should be in a conversation with Kansas City as one of the dominant teams in the AFC. But then we lose essentially by 44 points. That's where I look at it from this standpoint. To me, if you hold a 20-some point lead and then you end up losing by 20, you're damn near you lost by 40. I might as well I'm just doing it. To me, that's my math. This is my couch coach math for the night. And you just think to yourself, this Houston Texans team has got to really sit there and they got to think to themselves, we can do better than Bill O'Brien. We have to. We cannot just be here every Saturday of the wild card playing at 4:35. We cannot just keep on just winning 10 games every year, just barely winning the AFC South. We just can't not be in this spot. We need to stop being in this 4:30 window. First of all, we need to not lose these games at home in the wild card. We don't even need to be playing wild card weekend. We need to be fighting for home field advantage, or having a bad week and playing in the divisional round and actually hosting a divisional round instead of going on the road or even squeaking by victories. And you got to think about it. The only 2 wins that they've had in the wild card was against Oakland. And they were playing at Connor Cook because Derek Carr broke his leg. This year, they played Buffalo Bills team who is inexperienced. They almost lost to the Buffalo Bills. So to me, they gotta do something. They gotta realize, and they gotta think to themselves that they have to realize they have a problem, and it's their coach. they gotta let them go. They gotta realize that they are better than what they're doing. This team has too much talent. This team has the personnel that should be doing more than winning 10 games, than more than be hosting a wild card game. Houston has a quarterback that you think to yourself, I'm in every game because of Deshaun Watson. Like, I have almost a surefire quarterback that I know that has an opportunity to take over a game and dominate. I have that type of quarterback. But we're still stuck in the wild card. We're still stuck in the wild card. We're still stuck at winning 10 games. We're still stuck at squeaking by in the AFC North. Pardon me, the AFC South. This team just has they gotta know they gotta do better. And then it just doesn't help that they pretty much mortgaged their NFL draft this year. They lost their first round pick with getting Laramie Tunstall, and then essentially giving away all their second round picks, which in this case, and especially in this type of draft, most of those picks could have potentially been first round grade talent, where they could have bought in. And then just the simple fact of them not having a GM is just, to me, it's mind boggling that you don't have a GM. But I digress from that, and and with that said, and let's stay in the NFL playoffs with this one, with the San Francisco 49ers, who dominated against the Vikings. They beat them 27-10. And once again, the San Francisco 49ers, they just been doing this the entire year. They just been imposing their will in almost bully-like fashion. They just kill you with that run game, and then they just stranglehold you on defense. And it's just one of those things where it's just Aaron Rodgers is going to have to really pack his lunch for this matchup next week, because you got to think about it. This is pass rush is just vicious. You got Joey Bosa, Arrington, Solomon Thomas. These guys get at you, and they just impose their will on you, and it just gets ugly. San Francisco will run Tevin Coleman down your throat. Jimmy G will just hit you with here and there flashes, and he just, he's solid. San Francisco team is a problem going forward, and I just hope Aaron Rodgers brings his lunch in the NFC Championship game. And the final coaching vacancy of the National Football League has been filled. And so, in a surprising move, the Cleveland Browns picked former Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski as their new head coach. So, give you a little background on Kevin Stefanski. He's been with the Minnesota Vikings organization since 2006. He's even been there since probably since Leslie Frazier was their head coach. So, he's been around. So that lets you know, he's been around a lot of regimes. I think even dating back to maybe Brad Childress. He's been around for this organization for almost 14 years. He's well respected, especially considering the fact he's been with different coaching staffs, and he's been probably one of the most tenured coaches in that actual organization. Great coach, but he's bad for Cleveland. And this is my take on actually Stefanski actually being the coach with Cleveland. And I actually kind of talked about this last week. The Cleveland Browns needed a respected coach in a sense, not in a as far as the respect factor, but as far as a coach that's had a winning pedigree, a guy like a Mike McCarthy, which that's another thing where it's they would have listened to my podcast 2 weeks ago. They wouldn't even let this. They should have hired him. I did the podcast on New Year's Day, which on Wednesday. They listened to the podcast on Wednesday. They should have set an interview for Mike McCarthy and never let him leave the building. Almost similar to what the Cowboys did, because the Cowboys, essentially what they did was they went on a date with Mike McCarthy, and then they broke up with Jason Garrett after the fact. Which, the rules of engagement as far as NFL coaching, that's kind of cutthroat. But I digress. But I look at this team where Cleveland has the talent. Cleveland, even though they're 6-10, but they have I'd say 10-6, 11-5, 12-4 talent. They have talent. They need to have a coach that can maximize that talent to get this team to double-digit win. This is a team on paper could produce double-digit wins and could be a force in the National Football League. But you hire a guy like a Kevin Stefanski if you are rebuilding. If he has the keys to the van, to the sports car that needs to gut everything, including the engine and what have you. Kevin Stefanski is a guy that he should take over a team, and he gets to micromanage it in sense in his way as far as his personnel and what have you. He's a great coach for a rebuild, where in a sense you can give him time to actually do his thing. Cleveland, I think, in all honesty, in order for this thing to work, he's going to have a short window. Because if the short window, and the thing about it is, if this team isn't a playoff team within the next 2 to 3 years, who's to say that Kevin Stefanski is even going to be there to even, or are they even going to allow him to essentially rebuild this team after this situation or this experiment or this particular personnel doesn't work out, which it's a possibility that could possibly happen. And that's my thing, where he isn't going to have, I don't think, like a Matt Rule, where he's basically going to get 6 years to do his thing, and he can regroup. And he's not regroup, but he can essentially, he can rebuild his team brick by brick. Where, in a sense, you have a Cleveland where the foundation is there. It's just somebody just needs to manage that foundation from the actual foundation cracking or even the building falling down. That's the problem in Cleveland. Cleveland has a well-established foundation, but will they allow him to burn down the house and him essentially rebuilding? I don't think that's going to happen. I think especially in this weird how this organization is playing this, because it's almost like Kevin Stefanski is going to have to, it's not going to get the opportunity, I think, in my personal opinion, to grow in a sense. I think he's going to have to live and die with these guys, with these players, without essentially bringing in certain guys or bringing it in his own special particular way. He's going to have to win with these guys because they have so much invested in this team. And if this thing doesn't work out, he's out the door within the next 2 or 3 years, and he's going to probably be back on the NFL block. And hopefully it doesn't. His fall isn't too far off the rails. But that's going to be interesting going forward. And, and we shall see. And hopefully I'm wrong. And hopefully Kevin Stefanski will be a successful coach in this league and be extremely successful in the development of Baker Mayfield and just the development of the Cleveland Browns, and maybe he can bring his team to prominence. And I hope I am dead wrong, to be real with you. I hope I am dead wrong. And I hope I'm wrong. And I really do wish him the best, but I just look at the situation where I think this was just the wrong team for him to actually become a head coach, because I don't think Haslam's going to be patient enough to keep him. So this has been this week's Couch Coach Live. We want to thank everyone who have been a support to the podcast. Either you've listened, you shared it, downloaded, listen to it, tell a friend, or whatever you've done. We definitely appreciate the support going forward. And don't forget to follow us on all your favorite social media platforms, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere you have social media. Follow us on Couch Coach Live. Hashtag Couch Coach Live. Also, we're on every podcast with streaming podcast service. So Apple Podcast, Spotify, Podbean. We're there. Just Google search Couch Coach Live. We're everywhere, man. We want to thank everyone for listening to this week's Couch Coach Live podcast. And we'll see you guys next week. This has been the Couch Coach Live podcast.